Of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, CEO and founder here at Thoughtium, and I am joined by friends, plenty of them. We love coming to you each week, week over week, with a leadership perspective on topics that matter most to you all in business, in community, and in life. And I share the table today with, and I mean it, three of my best friends. Daryn Schwartz, founder of The Space Between here in Chicago. She's a perennial guest on the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series and a big part of our small business strong community. Daryn is here to share her insights on and lessons that she's learned over the course of the last year in building her business and building her community. We also have Norm Ralph, co-founder and COO here at Thoughtium, our fearless leader, someone who is at the forefront of the direction of Thoughtium and also in the trenches with us on a day-to-day basis. So Norm has plenty of lessons to share as well, too. And we want to welcome back to the table Amanda Lobo, who is our chief of staff here at Thoughtium, someone who is really running alongside Norm and I, guiding the direction and most importantly, the culture of our small business. So 4 friends, but also 4 weathered small business owners, if you will. And, you know, we really value this community. We've tapped into so many of our Navigating Now guests for their insights, their nuggets, their advice, their resources on how to build and grow small business. And today we thought maybe we'd share some lessons of our own. So today's episode is going to be a little bit of a retrospective look back. What are some of the biggest lessons that we've learned from 2022? And we'll end the show with a bit of a look forward because we love to do that as well, too. So Amanda, say hello. Welcome back. What have you been up to recently?
I mean, not much. Haven't had much going on. Just joining you guys back from mat leave. So I'm glad to be back and, you know, trying to figure out the juggle of working mom, but it's going well. Yeah.
You know, we, I think in prep for the show, I saw a note, Daryn, that maybe you had sent to us, almost acknowledging that every time you are on the show, you're like a totally different human. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I feel like maybe even all 4 of us have a little bit of a different stance, or we've all been through our own personal evolution over the last year. Amanda, I know you're a different human coming back.
I think about the last time I sat here with you, Daryn. It was almost exactly a year ago, and I found out I was pregnant like maybe 2 weeks after that, and I literally am a whole different human.
Yeah. What's the biggest thing that shifted for you?
Oh, man. I mean, I don't want to say too much because I'm going to share it in my lesson. Should I kick us off? How about I just kick us off?
Sure. What's your biggest lesson from 2022?
Because it's all the same, I think. So I think the biggest lesson for me is the realization that the only constant is change. And the learning for me is to embrace it and not to fight it. So like I just said, I found out I was pregnant early January last year. I immediately felt very terrible physically, as many women do. But I think what was surprising for me was how isolated I felt. Like everything started changing. And I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. Like my clothes didn't fit. My relationship started changing. Like I started questioning, like, do I fit in this workplace? Like, I mean, you name it. Like it's, when you go through this, I don't know, it's hard to explain, I guess, but it was a very like isolating, just strange time, and still continues to be. I'm working through it, you know. I felt like I was in constant tension with myself of like being anxious and disconnected. And I think you 3 know better than anybody, when I'm disconnected, I am at my worst. Like, it's a big canary for me. Mm-hmm. And so I've really been, as the new year has like come upon us, I'm really trying to shift my perspective and my mindset to be optimistic and excited about the change, and like be okay with letting some things go. We're in a new season. Mm-hmm. My family looks different. How I show up at work looks different. And just the whole complexion of my life looks different. So rather than white knuckling like what used to be, I'm looking for new hobbies. I'm looking like I'm changing how I physically cut my hair, you know, like I'm trying to just like embrace the change and be optimistic about it rather than mourning everything that's different.
Yeah.
I'm still in it. I'm still figuring it out. But the word for my year is like, I'm going to reinvent myself this year. And that feels exciting and not as daunting.
Yeah. We know that you are also kind of on the front end of really writing the policy on what it means to be a parent here at Thoughtium. What are maybe 1 or 2 ways that your employer has really supported you over the course of the last, 6 to 7 months that you could share with the community?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we didn't have a policy yet, right? Because it hasn't been applicable. And so I sat down and was like, I'm going to figure this out. I put it in front of Norm and we were like, this is a lot harder than we thought it was going to be. Just, from like kind of the lack of support from a systemic standpoint. There's no support for parents. There's no support for small businesses. And so it was, I'm so lucky that I got to sit with you guys on this and decide what that's going to look like and how we're going to support parents. And so we came up with a really, really great mat leave. We stretched as far as I think we can in this season of our business. And it was, a lot more time off than many parents get. And, it's been great because you guys have just let me kind of like figure it out, right? Like the flexibility is there to kind of skin my knees. And I do feel like I can say like, I don't have it, I'm struggling, or, this is where I am today. Yeah. And what's exciting is like, we get to model that to the team together. We get to show like what great looks like in that way. And so we're kind of figuring it out together, which is nice. We don't have to have all the answers today.
Yep. Yep. And I know that the team has felt very connected to you over the course of the last few months. We've definitely learned a lot just in terms of, how to support you through this transition. And we'll continue to do that. It's a really exciting time for us. I think the word that you bring up there is agility. And, we love to train our clients on this term. And we define that by the ability to move free and easy. And I think that might be a theme that you're going to hear throughout the four of us. So why don't we hand the mic over to Daryn? And Daryn, I want to bring you into the discussion. Gosh, it just feels like we're growing our businesses alongside of each other. And that is maybe just one of the most surprising yet delightful aspects of how passionate we are about supporting small businesses like ours, is that we, a client services organization, traditionally a consulting, coaching, advising organization, can find so much overlap with a yoga studio and lifestyle brand that you're building in the space between. So we've had such great visibility into you and your evolution, and we're so proud of you over the course of the last year. What's maybe a big lesson that you've learned in 2022?
I think this was a tough one for me because this last year was nothing but lessons. And you talk about skinning your knees. I skinned my knees a lot along the way. But I think the biggest lesson for me, the biggest takeaway was to be intentional. This time last year, maybe the end of 2021, I realized I was kind of out of integrity with myself and out of integrity with the way that I wanted to show up in my own life and the way that I wanted to show up in business. And I started January of 2022 with intentional January. And I had a literal star chart where I had 5 categories and I would give myself a star for every time that I hit one of my markers there. And it was so interesting. I think when I was intentional about my life and I was intentional about the way I wanted to show up, everything kind of aligned with where I was going and who I wanted to be. Yeah. And it gave me a really good framework to say, I'm in alignment, I'm out of alignment, and kind of, some guardrails, some boundaries, some structure for me. And what it really did for me was that it really pointed my needle in the direction that I wanted to go. And from there, magic unfolded. So yeah, that was my big lesson.
I will tell you, and Norm can definitely relate to this, one of the incredible byproducts of that inflection point that you had at the beginning of last year, where you're like, I'm out of alignment. And the journey that you went through over 2022 is that I personally have been in a room with you and a handful of other people in your classes or even in groups like this, where you have been able to very clearly tell this story. Mm-hmm. I've seen you do it in front of a packed yoga studio with 40 of your own clients. You've told this story, and it's been just so life-giving, I think, to so many people who are experiencing some of the same inflection points in their life, to be able to hear you speak so vulnerably about your struggle, about that agility that you've had to express in that story. And that authenticity is almost like if there was a proverbial sign at the door of the space between. It's like, you come in here, you leave your ego outside, and you bring your authenticity coming in.
Yeah, I think that we've created a container for people to come and get what they need. But part of that container is modeling what it means to be your whole self, to be your true self, and whatever that means. Yeah. And to be able to examine that and be alongside other people in that. And so if I'm not standing up there speaking my truth, how can I expect anybody else to live in theirs?
At the same time, we can't, so I've been to a handful of different yoga studios. Not every yoga studio starts with your truth, right? Or
Right.
the journey, right? It's most of them start with some sort of like prompt or cue. And I feel like every time I step into the space between, I'm a part of a story.
I'm so glad you said that, because I always say, like, I always tell my teachers, don't bring your shit, bring your story.
Ooh.
Right.
Put that
and
on
there's
a t-shirt.
difference. And I think we can apply that in business. We can apply that in friendships. We can apply that in life. Like, we all have a perspective from the things that we've been through, the things that we've experienced, and that informs our lives. And that is your story. So you don't want to show up with your messiness. You don't want to show up with your shit. You want to show up with your story and your perspective.
Yes.
Rather than projecting, offer someone perspective and show them that it's okay to be messy, that it's okay to have these experiences and feel these things, and let it move you.
Yeah.
Let it drive you.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your story.
Thank
you. We would be okay if you show up with your shit every once in a while.
and
we always
I
are.
have.
You absolutely have. But thank you for your story, and thanks for allowing us to be a part of yours, for sure. Speaking of perspective, I feel like, Norm, you've been at the forefront of so much perspective over the course of the last year. Not just developing your own personal perspective, which I've seen you do as a business leader and as a friend, but also helping small businesses like Daryn's develop their own perspectives, showing up with their story. I feel like, of all of the folks that I work alongside on a day-to-day basis, you probably have some of the most incredible lessons last year. So if you had to pick one, what might you share with our small business community?
Yeah, as I looked back, it was difficult to choose like a moment. And so as I look back, it's really this theme that you underestimate what can happen in a year. And transformation is done through day-to-day consistency. And I loved your word of like intention and integrity, because that's what I've seen as well. I think all of us, again, it's the busyness, especially over the last couple of years. We've all been amongst change that has been unprecedented. None of us could have planned some of the variables, whether they're personal variables or social variables. But again, it's like you have the opportunity every day to make good decisions. And when all of a sudden you start to line those up and you allow yourself to stay open and say, like, what might happen if I take one step forward? It doesn't require a plan that's going to be 12 months out. It also doesn't require you to overcommit yourself, but it requires you every day to say, I'm going to make an even better decision today than I did yesterday. And so when I look at those small moments, for me, I couldn't have imagined standing here 12 months ago and saying, like, what are some of the big, just monumental moments from the previous year? I couldn't have imagined that it would have included me running alongside an inspiring leader like Daryn, again, as part of a well-being brand. And I've never taken a yoga class. I had no idea even what that experience would look like or feel like. Equally getting a chance to be in deep partnership with Susanna Dellinger, who runs a clean beauty agency. Again, I'm not the industry leader here in Chicago on clean beauty. However, what I did acknowledge was, a couple of real variables. First being that intersection of community and business. We really shared that value amongst all of us. Second is, small business life is hard, and it is way harder than I could have ever anticipated. And so as you start to acknowledge that and you surround yourself with other small business leaders, all of a sudden there's a kindred spirit and an understanding, like, to operate a business, particularly over the last couple of years. It's hard. I mean, there are days where you lose yourself, you lose your identity, the responsibility is overwhelming, and there's nowhere to go. Like, you are the person that people are looking to for the answers. And so I think through that journey, we've had such an ability to co-design and co-create. What does it look like to create a small business community where we have shared partnerships, we've got shared mindset, and we have the ability to grow together. And that growth process has transcended any business metrics, any traditional contracts or partnerships. What it is like, I got you. Like, I'm in it. I'm in the work. I'm here every day and I'm showing up. And so that level of consistency is what I've come to appreciate. And I'd say for me, it's been some of my greatest expressions of, my practitionership and maybe arguably my purpose, which is to be that guide, to be somebody who can show up, can start to really understand what it takes to be, again, in those uncertain times, but to say, like, we're here, one step in front of the next, in front of the next. So again, that perspective building for me, it just felt like as a fog is kind of lifted for me. And I've been able to every day, every week, every month say, wow, look what I've been able to do. And so again, I look back where I'm standing here 12 months ago, there wasn't a plan. I didn't have this plan, but it was a confidence to say, I'm going to take one step.
Norm, I think like your middle name is I Got You. Or as people have referred to as Norm in a cape. And like your capacity is large and your capacity for work is probably larger than most. Talk to me a little bit about like capacity and then also filling your capacity with the right things or the right things for you or the right things for your business.
Yeah. And this definitely came and prompted some of this, small business partnership where last year I just, my cup was completely empty. I mean, there was just a point where even with as big of an engine and capacity that I had, it was just completely empty. And I remember, Amanda, you looking at me and saying, what do you need? And I was like, I have no idea. Like my service orientation was so over rotated that I just truly wasn't taking care of myself. And I definitely took the point where it's like, I got to start looking for what is it that I need and also starting to look more inward. And so for me, it was a bit of a shift from intensity and starting to continue to look as a type A achiever and striver to saying like, how do I create some stillness to start to look a bit more inward and say like, let's start to tap into more intuition and what is it that I need? And so again, for me, it was, it would be very typical to say like, my commitment is 3 times a week, I'm going to do this. And like, this is what that's going to look like. And I can't wait to achieve that. Instead, it was, well, I'm going to go to one class and I'm going to just experience like, what would it be like to take a yoga experience? And so I felt at home there and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And the next week, all of a sudden something unfolded and it was like, hey, we're thinking about going to the lakefront and we might do this meditation at 6:30 in the morning and then jump in the cold water. What do you think? And I was like, that just seems crazy. And I was like, but I'll see you there next Wednesday. And then all of a sudden that became a ritual. And so to me, again, it was like, I started making those small decisions that all of a sudden I started feeling the energy and the alignment and my cup getting full and being surrounded by other individuals that I was equally inspired by, but also receiving from. And so I learned a tremendous amount over the past 6 to 12 months that allowed me to really say like, this is where I want to continue to pour into. And it's from a full cup. And it required me to start looking more inward and not focus on spinning 187 plates, which I arguably am good at, but it becomes very exhausting and it started to deplete me.
I do want to just reflect back. You might not remember this, but it was maybe fall of 2021. I was like, hey, do you guys want to go to this sound journey? Neither of you guys have been to the studio yet.
Never heard of a sound journey at that point.
And I was trying to get them in the studio. And Norm was like, yeah, don't sign me up for yoga. Like, I'll maybe come to a sound journey. I can't go to this one, but like, don't put me down for yoga. And now he knows what a one-legged vinyasa is.
And he signed up for his first sound journey.
Sound journey.
This Friday is my first.
This is the first one. Okay.
The first full sound journey.
We'll report back on that.
Yeah. But I think for me, again, it really came down to, looking at this year, what really shifted. It was for me a real focus inward. And again, as a small business owner, it's so easy to continue to take care of everybody else, take care of your business. You lose sight. And I remember people saying like, you need to put your own mask on, but it just never, I was like, I'm good. Like I've got capacity. Like I'm just going to keep going. And at some point I just hit that limit where I'm like, it's actually time for me to slow down.
Your limit's higher.
My limit might be higher, but I definitely hit that capacity. So for me, again, a not real opportunity to look and say, if community is so important, imagine a world where you could just pour into both business and community like all at once. And I feel like this past year has been a real integration of the best of all.
Yeah, such great insights. And I think, hopefully our community out there are starting to make some connections behind why we love so much this small business community. And not just, business owner to business owner, but the insights that we get from small business owners like yourself, Daryn, who on a day-to-day basis have to kind of check where they're at and also check their business almost like constantly on a day-to-day basis. That's a point that we've all been able to relate to. And we've also gotten a lot of feedback from you all, our community, that you love hearing from small business owners, even those who work in massive organizations, because those insights are so transferable. And I'd say, one of the themes that I'm hearing actually taps into one of my biggest lesson learns for 2022 is that the way that you take care of yourself outside of these four walls, whether it's your own business or whether it's your day-to-day job, really impacts the way that you show up for work. Mm. And I say that because, especially as small business owners, and really as anybody who is career focused, we're so often worried about how what happens in work affects our personal lives, right? Like, the stress and or the anxiety, or maybe even sometimes the excitement and the ambition of building a career or building a personal brand sometimes really impacts the way that we navigate our lives outside of work. And that's something we're typically always focused on. What I realized, the lesson for me in 2022, is that what I'm able to do outside of these walls, a little bit of the self-care, a little bit of the investment in myself, knowing also when I walk out of here and the stress levels are so high, knowing what to do in those moments, developing a nurturing relationship outside of work, those relationships that are not tied to business outcomes, your friends, your family, your loved ones, that serves who I am as a leader when I come into work. And that relationship almost flipped for me to where now I'm so excited about continuing to pour into my life outside of work, continuing to blur the lines between work and life. And it's all good. And that's a big lesson that I've learned in 2022. And all of you were a big part of that. Yeah.
Anthony, I think something that we all know about you, I don't know if this community knows about you, is that you've always been into growth and personal growth, and you're an Ironman, you're an athlete, you're been doing athletic greens longer than everybody knows about athletic greens. You've been putting in the work for a really long time, but I've seen a shift from this build mentality to an ease. And it almost looks like you're doing these things for a different reason now. What was that shift? What did something trigger that? Was there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, part of it was maybe out of necessity. And I'll go back to the life cycle of an entrepreneur. You get to these points, and Norm mentioned it, you get to these points where you look around and you say, gosh, my tank is really empty, and I need to find a way to fill it outside of build what's next for the business. And I think then you spend a little bit of time investing in those relationships outside of work, and you realize, oh my gosh, not only have I been missing pouring into personal relationships, but it also fuels who I am when I walk in and develop professional relationships as well too. So I'd say part of it was out of necessity. I definitely had some moments last year where I had to really acknowledge the way that I was existing in both worlds. And I also think part of it too is maybe just the maturity that I've been able to find as a man, and also as a business leader. 6 years in, you start to realize, what not only what's working, what's not, but you start to realize what are those essential tools that I must have in order to allow this company and these relationships to be sustainable. And I think that took us a little bit of maturation, if you will, for me as a man, for sure, and also as an entrepreneur. And I think those two things maybe have come together over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. Yeah. Well, gosh, I love this because, you sit down with four entrepreneurs and you ask the question, what are your big lessons from last year? And as much as all of us could sit here and talk about our business models, our top line revenue, our marketing outreach, our mailing lists and challenges that we might have in terms of the day-to-day, this is what is at the forefront of who we are as leaders. And we know that leadership is becoming more and more of bringing your whole self to the table. And, Navigating Now itself is a huge celebration of that. So, here's to so many more discussions about the different dimensions of leadership, the breaking down of silos and walls that may have existed in years past. And here's to continuing to step into our own stories as we create the future. And speaking of creating the future, let's do a quick lightning round as we look forward. What is one word that describes what you're focused on as a leader in 2023? And Amanda, maybe we'll start with you. I think we heard it earlier in the episode.
Reinvent.
Nice. Ooh, just emphatic. Reinvent. Just don't drop the mic. It's expensive.
Probably not surprising to many of you. It's a hyphen word or more than one word, but it's just be. And so for me, what that looks like is it doesn't, again, need to be accomplishment based or even milestone based, but an opportunity to really have a unique perspective, like in the now and in the present. Because there's just been a lot of both, business and professional and personal work that has been done, but it doesn't need to be seeking. And so I think, again, for me, there's a real transition between seeking and just allowing it to be.
Yeah.
So just be.
Yeah. Norm, you and I talked about being available for life. Being available for life, I think is, but I love just be. I mean, that's super sticky. Okay, Daryn.
Mine is faith and trust. And what that looks like for me is like, I'm going to like unclench my fists and smooth out my hands and hold them open and hold my desires delicately and trust and have faith that it's all unfolding in the way that it should. And I need to give it life and room to breathe and grow rather than like white knuckling.
I felt like I needed to just drop into meditation as you were as you were taking us through that. So thank you for that, Daryn.
That is my job.
Absolutely. I will say that for me, I'm also going to use two words, but the two words for me in 2023 are direct and decisive. And I know direct and decisive, those might feel like more rigid words. But direct and decisive about what fills me up, direct and decisive about what is best for our growing business and our team, direct and decisive also about the investments that I'm making both in and outside of these walls. And that even over the course of the last few weeks, as I've done this reflection, has allowed me to more specifically, more directly pour into those people like you all in ways that if you get kind of caught up in the minutia, you're just not able to do. And so I bring into 23 a sense of direct and decisive. And I also bring into 2023 three of my really good friends. Daryn, who's now, I think, 4 times on the show, we discussed earlier, and hopefully it's 4 of 40 in the next couple years. We want to congratulate you, Daryn, for the growth and the progress, both personally and professionally over the last year. We've been thrilled to be a part of it. Amanda, we want to congratulate you on continuing to navigate such a huge inflection point for you and allowing that to fuel the way that you're building people and culture here at Thoughttium. Norm, I want to congratulate you and thank you for the capacity that you've shown. And as well the presence that you will continue to show over the course of the next year. We also want to thank you, our community, for joining us today. This was just a wonderful discussion, very kind of unscripted, but I feel like we could do this almost every week, and hopefully you all got a nugget or two out of it, or maybe affirmed some of your aspirations going into 2023. We are here every week, Thursday at 3:00 Central. You can look at all of our past episodes and look forward at who will be at the table next week at thoughttium.com/live. We want to thank our LinkedIn community, YouTube, all folks, our team who are joining remotely today. Thank you all for being a part of this wonderful journey that is Navigating Now. And I feel like we need to do the proverbial kind of hug.
Group hug.
Yeah. All right. We love that. Okay. We can't cut that. It's a live show. So you guys have a great week.